I mean, like Dr. William Bay, I've never actually met him personally, but I've looked at his good work, and Gerard Rennick and I talk quite often, and we support Gerard Rennick. We're not running anyone in Victoria, but we're asking the GAP members to support Gerard Rennick. He has done an outstanding job. There's no question about that. And I think with a bit more interaction with myself, we can really be a power force into the future.
I hear nothing but good reports about Gerard Rennick. And we'll just say here that William Bay won an extraordinary case last year against his being tipped out as a doctor simply for telling his patients the truth. So for that, he garnered many plaudits, much praise.
Yeah, look, originally William was looking at running with Gerard Rennick's party, and look, I'm open and honest. Gerard was procrastinating over that because he thought William was a bit of a loose cannon in a nice way. I don't, and often we need a loose. Well, people say I'm a bit of a loose cannon, but as long as you control and work out your target, there's nothing wrong with that. But look, it's unfortunate that some of these people that we select tend to take matters in their own hands. They become very passionate. They get into a platform where they're publicly being noticed, that they're running under the GAP figure. And look, unfortunately, William Bay has come out publicly and stated that that the preference, and I mean, look, it's only a preference, it's only his opinion or whatever the preferences of the party. We don't compel people to vote that way. It's just what we would suggest if we were going to the polls, given how all the preferences are flowing. We say that this is the best way for anyone that is looking at a way to vote, to benefit and make sure that the votes don't exhaust and end up with the majors. So, look, William came out and said publicly that to place Gerard Rennick number 1 and GAP number 2 on the ticket. Well, that is not the view of the Great Australian Party. You would always put Great Australian Party number 1, Gerard Rennick number 2, because we've got to look at the primary votes. So I spoke to William and said, look, and so did Margaret Menzel. And Margaret Menzel has a long history of how preferencing works right back to grade 9, and I think she's nearly 70 years of age at the moment. So she's had a long history of how the preferences work, and she's always stuck by the party, and she was my chief of staff. She's absolutely, her political knowledge is just, you can't buy that sort of knowledge. And look, we had a good chat to William, and William just said he believes that God has spoken to him. And I said, well, that might be the case, but God is not on the electoral roll. God is not running as number 1 candidate in Queensland, and God is not the registered offer for the Great Australian Party. And for those reasons, we cannot approve what you believe might be a strategy, because once we put the test to it, even if it did have merit, we would then say, well, where does this benefit Gerard Rennick? And as it's been tested, his belief would just not help Gerard Rennick at all. So, look,
and it's more than that. I think the optics of it are really odd. I mean, I'm over in New Zealand, but it makes no sense when a candidate for standing for the Great Australian Party is not putting the Great Australian Party at number 1. And I think God would support loyalty. That's what I'd say.
Well, one would like to think so. But look, I, at the end of the day, I just have to do what is right for the party. Now, I didn't tell him to take it down. I just thought he's now putting it up. And if people have a look at it, it is, he's authorising it himself, which he can't do. And he's, has received a notice from the Australian Electoral Commission today that he is not the registered officer, he is completely out of control, and that if he doesn't remove it, there are serious consequences. And look,
and Ron, could that get you as leader of the party into legal?
No, because I haven't authorised it, and I've spoken to him, and look, William.
You're being transparent.
Well, look, look, everyone has a right to. Well, democracy is do what you think is right. But if you have been told that it's not right and you continue to do that, well, then that's a different story. Now, William has been has spoken to Michael O'Neill, who's the leader of Heart, which is the joint ticket. Michael O'Neill has spoken to me. Heart are not preferencing Gerard Rennick number one. Why would they? They're putting Gap number one. And so he hasn't consulted the Heart Party. He hasn't consulted me. He just has gone off on a wing and a prayer on his own belief because he believes it's a strategy that he's prepared to take a risk that he believes is going to work. But there's nothing supporting anything that what his belief. And in the end, he just said, I said, give me something, William. And he repeated it to Michael O'Neill when Michael O'Neill put the test on him. And he says, well, I don't really have anything. God has told me to do it. Well, I'm sorry, that's not, there's no evidence of that. There's nothing in writing to say that that has occurred. And for those reasons, we have put up on the Great Australian Party website how to vote cards, number one for Gap in the middle. Now, it's number one. So, that's the way it goes. I mean, other than that, go run for Gerard Rennick's party. Don't run for Gap, William. And,
these are the vicissitudes of politics. There can be some really odd things that happen, and you don't, as you said, you don't really know somebody until you start working with them in politics, and then you can see a very different side. Personally, I like William and I admire what he did last year legally, but it struck me as very odd and concerning. I would say this, Rod, for a very difficult situation for you as leader and under the pressure you're under, you've handled that explanation as a real leader with dignity and grace and actually some generosity, but also a firmness. And I commend you for that. It's a difficult situation, very difficult.
Well, it's I've only got certain control, but I didn't. But the AEC's acted. I always knew in the back of my mind. He's going and putting under Great Australian Party, make Australia great again. Doing what America, that's not what, if you want your country back, vote Gap or We Are Australian. Great Australian Party, and not only that, it's the Great Australian Party. He's coming out with Great Australia Party. So, he's just completely gone on a wing and a prayer. He hasn't gone through our marketing. Great Australian Party has key players that make sure that our brand and everything goes out, everything's right. We have media, we have all these, we have social media people that are the eyes and watchdogs. People doing our website, all this sort of stuff. And he hasn't consulted with any of them. He's just gone out on a wing and a prayer. So in actual fact, I can honestly say, unfortunately, he's gone rogue. And what else can I say? That's the truth. And sometimes, you get it in the major parties, you get it in you get it in all parties where they go and disendorse them. I'm not going to disendorse William Bay. It is too close to the election. But I just want to assure the followers on this live stream that we've put the test to it. I have not authorised anything of the sort that William Bay's coming out to claim on his beliefs. And I've put the test to it through the proper channels and through the expertise that we've always relied on this party, the best way to benefit Gerard Rennick, which is what William Bay wants to do. There's no question about that. And we are supporting Gerard Rennick. He is number 2 on the ticket. He's equally supporting me in Western Australia, number 2. But he's got William Bay as number 5. What William's not concentrating on is the primary votes. If you don't not everyone's going to go to the poll as a Gap member and vote for Gerard Rennick. So we're saying, cut the nonsense, do the right thing. We've put it to the test, get the primary vote. If the primary vote runs out, Jared Rennick gets it as number 2. And, you know, he hasn't consulted the Hart Party. So they're on the joint ticket who support exactly what I'm saying. In actual fact, their preferences are very similar to